You've been holding space for everyone. Touch yourself, wearing calm like karma, though you're crying out for help. It's okay to feel tired, to feel lost, to feel undone. But darling, even shadows rest under the sun. Keep going, even when the light feels low. Keep growing. Every seed takes time to show. You don't have to move too fast. The moment knows how long to last. Keep going. Grace is slow. Pages turn without your push. Still the story flows. Let go of the timeline. Let your softness grow. You're not behind, you're just becoming. And every breath is a kind of humming. Oh, keep going. Like the tide, like the breeze. Keep knowing. Even stillness is a need. You're not late, you're right on time. Like the rhythm in a choir. Keep going. You're doing fine. Trust the whisper, not the noise. Let silence be a choice. You are not your pace. You are your peace. Keep going.
Shout out to the family, much love, honor, and respect. I wanted to come on with breaking news. Iran has just launched hundreds of missiles into Israel. Hundreds of missiles into Israel. Actually responding to a preemptive attack from last night by Israel on Iran's nuclear facilities. So what I wanted to do was to come on. This is historical news for those that understand the scriptures and understand that World War III is the final woe. Okay? 2 woes have already passed. And this final woe is the fall of Babylon the Great. It's the fall of the 4th and final beast of Daniel, the 7th chapter. Pay attention to what's going on, especially for you Israelites. We understand that blacks are the real Jews. We understand that as a member of the 12 tribes of Israel, we have to turn from our wicked ways. We have to repent And we have to keep the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. If you don't, you have no idea of what's coming. So shout out to the family. Israel, your redemption is nigh, even at the door. We'll go to YouTube and see what we can pull up about it. There are a few live streams going on now. For those that do not know, Palestine has been bombed for the last 18 months. Men, women, and children, civilians, bombed as well as starved by Israel for the last 18 months. I don't know where you would have to be. You know, most Americans are in La La Land. King said it best: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And how long do you think that you're going to be able to bring as much havoc on the earth as you have? I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get my account banned and taken down. But pay attention, Israel. Turn away from your wicked ways. You have no power in sin. Pay attention to what's going on. See the signs of the times. Gird yourself and your family. Get prepared, because Jacob's trouble is on its way. All right? So pay attention. This is the live stream, and this is actual. This is right now. And the bombs are, missiles are coming.
Here's how I got my team to use Monday Sales CRM and actually like it. Let me start by saying it's so easy.
See if we can find anything else on it right now. The chat is on right.
Okay, I'll come in a bit.
But we had Marco Rubio saying that there was no U.S. involvement.
Many shoppers you see here rushing to stock up on food and the essentials to hunker down for the next few days. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel's strikes on Iran are not over. And he also said his country had no choice but to go on an attack.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
As we continue to follow this very fluid story, let's go now live to Paula Hancock, joining us from Abu Dhabi. Paula, what are leaders in other parts of the region saying?
Well, Paulo, the overwhelming feeling among leaders in this region is concern that this could become a wider conflict, that these tensions could escalate. Now, we have heard condemnation across the board from the countries here against Israel's unprecedented strikes against Iran. Saudi Arabia was among the first to respond, saying that they had strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli attacks. We heard similar sentiment from the Lebanese, both the president and the prime minister. The president saying that he's really trying to focus now on stability in the region. This concern is really a recurring one across this region at this point. Qatar calls it a dangerous escalation. The UAE condemned it, calling on the United Nations Security Council to work towards achieving a ceasefire. So there really are concerns here that this could become even more unprecedented than it is already. We're seeing airspaces across the region being shut down, airlines saying that they are not operating in certain areas, and it's an obvious reason for that. We've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that this will continue for a number of days. The Israeli military saying that they used some 200 fighter jets to strike more than 100 targets in Iran itself. And as we know, the retaliation from Iran has begun. There were 100 drones that were fired towards Israeli territory. The Israeli military says at this point that they are in the process of intercepting, meaning shooting down those drones outside of Israeli territory. So it's not entirely clear where exactly that was at this point. But the concerns here are very high about how far this could escalate. Certainly we've heard from the Israeli side that they see the Iranian nuclear program, what they perceive as the progress that has been made there, as an existential threat, which is why they decided that they needed to act now, despite the fact that we were waiting for the 6th round of talks between the US and Iran on Sunday in Muscat in Oman. That diplomatic process was believed to be ongoing, although we had heard from the US side far less optimism than we did at the beginning of the process. Certainly the US President Donald Trump saying that he was far less optimistic than he had been just a couple of months earlier. But we are also seeing from the US an effort to try and distance themselves from what has happened in the early hours of Friday morning. We did hear from the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, saying that there was no US involvement, US assistance in the strikes. Israel took unilateral action against Iran. But two sources familiar with the situation have told us that the US president and also senior White House officials were expecting these strikes. Paulo?
The question now, though, will officials in Iran believe what we're hearing from the White House right now? Paula Hancock's in Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for all your reporting. H.A. Hellier is a Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security. He joins us from Cairo, Egypt, with some analysis. It's great to see you again, H.A., on what's been a very busy morning thus far. Let's dive straight in. I wonder if you could just put into perspective not only the scale, but also the objective of these strikes.
So they're very, I have to say, they're somewhat unrelated in the sense that the scale of the strikes are meant to be big. They're meant to be, as noticeable as possible. There's nothing clandestine that's going on here. On the contrary, as you mentioned this morning, as your report mentioned this morning, Netanyahu has made it very clear that he's going after several types of targets over several days, if necessary. And I think that's telling, that the idea is to make this as big a noise as possible. And it's hard to ignore the expectation from many within the region that this is really about a political move. This is really about ensuring that the United States and Iran do not continue with any sort of successful deal, that attention is diverted away from including his own domestic political woes. So I think that the aim in that regard has to be kept in mind. When it comes to the scale, of course, this will have struck.
AI moves fast. Your billing should too. With ChargeBee, you can move beyond payments to better billing. Monetize at the speed of AI with billing that works with you. Better billing starts with ChargeBee. Sign up now and receive 1 billion billing credits free.
Already started responding this morning. I fully expect that they will continue to do so. So it sends everything into a bit of a spiral, which is why you've seen so many around the world come out in quite grave condemnation. And it's not out of some sort of newfound fandom or love for the Iranian regime. On the contrary, I think that there's a full realization that the Iranian regime is quite a dangerous one and has been a bad actor in the region on many different issues. But if you take this sort of step, then all you do is invite more destabilization in the region. You invite war. You set into motion a set of events that you cannot control, you will not be able to control. But as has been stated many times, including on CNN, Netanyahu is looking to forge some kind of quote unquote new Middle East. And it's one in which there is a certain type of hegemony in place. And of course, it will not belong to the region. It will belong to Israel and its allies. I think we have to be very careful about the moment that we're going into right now. Very dangerous.
Yeah, and clearly, as you lay out, the Prime Minister has his very clear objective here. And keeping that in mind, do you think that there's any way to de-escalate this conflict, or is it bound to really just spiral out of control?
So there is a way, but here's the issue. There's been a way multiple times, not simply when it comes to this sort of issue between Iran and Israel, over the past 2 years, over, frankly, many more years beyond that. But it requires quite decisive action from the United States. The United States is the most powerful actor in the region, especially when it comes to the Israelis. We haven't mentioned the war on Gaza yet. I'm sure that this will come up through the course of the day because they are connected. And the reality here is that if the United States made it abundantly clear to Tel Aviv that if you pursue certain actions, that we simply will not support you, and we will withdraw some of our support. There's no way that the Israelis would have embarked on this set of events this morning had they not felt that they could count on the United States, despite the fact that, by the way, I want to make very clear here, the United States has been trying very hard to distance itself from these attacks this morning. And I think that's genuine. I don't think that that's fake. I think that they were not happy about it in the slightest. But does that translate into actual consequences for Israel following such an act? If the United States shows that there would be consequences in terms of the American relationship, then yes, de-escalation, I think, would happen absolutely immediately.
It's certainly telling that the U.S. was able to orchestrate their response quite quickly while everything else was playing out in the Middle East. H.A. Hellyer, thank you so much for your analysis, as always.
Thank you.
Well, the U.S. is distancing itself from Israel's attack on Iran, which President Trump explicitly warned against just days ago. The administration now looking to make clear that Israel acted on its own. CNN senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes with more.
We've still not gotten any sort of direct response from President Donald Trump or the White House, but they are pointing to this statement from Marco Rubio, which is really serving right now as a statement for the entire administration. I want to read it in full. It says, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We were not involved in the strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel." Now, that's a couple lines I want to point out here. One, they are clearly stressing the fact that this was unilateral action. The other part of this, we know that the United States had been concerned about U.S. personnel in the Middle East. They'd already started trying to evacuate non-essential personnel from that region. In fact, Donald Trump was actually asked about this earlier today, if the Israelis had given him any indication or any reasoning to withdraw those personnel, and he said no, they had not. But we are told that White House officials were expecting this attack. They were expecting this to happen, and they were bracing themselves for it. Now, the other part of the statement that I want to point to is this line here. It says, "Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense." The reason I'm pointing to that is because it's going to raise a lot of questions as to who informed the U.S. Did Netanyahu talk directly to Donald Trump? The last known conversation between those two leaders was on Monday, and Donald Trump has both privately and publicly urged Netanyahu not to make any strikes or any moves towards Iran, particularly as these negotiations were going on between the United States and Iran. As early as earlier today, we were told that Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff was still expected to go to Oman to travel for these sixth round of these U.S.-Iran talks. Obviously, it seems as though they're very unlikely to continue at this point. Now, a statement that Donald Trump made before this happened, but likely as his team was bracing and gearing up for these potential strikes, he posted this on Truth Social. He said, "We remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran." So clearly here they're pointing to this, saying that they still wanted these negotiations to continue, and they're not fully supporting any kind of potential strikes from Israel here. So again, a lot of questions as to who informed who when. Have these two leaders spoken? Did Donald Trump at any point try to dissuade Netanyahu from actually launching these strikes? And that's what we're currently looking into. Kristen Holmes, CNN, Washington.
And lawmakers in the U.S. are very closely watching this conflict, including the Democratic leader of the House, who's reacting to news of Israel's strikes by describing Iran as the enemy of the world. Hakeem Jeffries telling MSNBC that he's got no intelligence briefing on the situation thus far, but he expects to get more information sooner rather than later.
We certainly believe that Iran should never be allowed to become nuclear capable. They are an enemy not just to Israel, but to the United States and to the free world. But we also want to see a reduction in hostilities.
The Democratic lawmaker also told MSNBC that President Trump's day one promise, at least mentioned President Trump's day one promise to restore peace in the Middle East. And he also called the whole Trump presidency, quote, a complete failure. Jeffrey says that he hopes cooler heads will prevail in the region. Israel says that it's begun to shoot down Iranian drones that were launched in retaliation for an unprecedented series of military strikes. And that is our breaking news at this hour here on CNN. Israel says that it struck over 100 nuclear and military targets across Iran, like this uranium enrichment site that's you can see off in the distance, engulfed in flames with plumes of smoke rising from the scene. Also, they hit nuclear and military facilities, as well as targeting some key personnel. The commander-in-chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, as well as 6 nuclear scientists, were among those killed in the attacks. And this may be just the beginning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the operation will continue for days to come, while Iran's supreme leader is vowing to strike back. And this morning, evidence that retaliation has begun. Israel's Army Chief of Staff is asking people to prepare for that retaliation.
Citizens of Israel, I don't promise you only successes. The Iranian regime will attempt to attack us in response. The absorption of incoming hits may be different than what we have gotten used to. The IDF is prepared to defend the Israeli home front, and I ask you to demonstrate personal, family, and communal responsibility and adhere to instructions.
Jeremy Diamond is CNN's Jerusalem correspondent. He's been tracking developments from New York.
Any one of these, targeted killings would be major headlines in and of themselves, right? I mean, you're talking about the chief of staff of the Iranian armed forces, the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. I mean, either one of those would be a major moment and would also probably prompt Iranian retaliation. And we are already starting to get now some insight into what that retaliation will look like. The Israeli military spokesman, General Efi Defrin, just spoke not long ago, and he said that there are over 100 drones that Iran has fired from its territory towards Israeli territory, and that Israeli air defenses are readying to try and intercept those threats. We know from the other times that Iran has used drones against Israel that will likely take several hours before they actually reach Israeli airspace. And the key question now is, what are the efforts being made, not just by Israel, but by the United States and also by other countries in the region, both countries that have formal relations with Israel and those that do not. What efforts will they make to help Israel intercept those drones that are now headed for Israel? We know in the past Israel has gotten a lot of support from a regional coalition to not only intercept, the actual interception of those drones and missiles, but also the intelligence, the radar signals that have been provided by other countries in the region as well. But we are now getting, a first sense of the Iranian retaliation for this. And again, as the Israelis are saying, that this will not just be a one-day operation, that there will be, likely several more days of airstrikes ahead. That also could likely mean days of Iranian retaliation and a very, very dangerous tit for tat in a region that is already a tinderbox.
And experts have long warned that an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear capabilities could drag the region into a full-scale war and also trigger tremendous retaliation from Iran. CNN security analyst Beth Sander explains why Iran's response could be like nothing we've ever seen.
I think that there's one way of putting where we are right now. I mean, Israel is at war with Iran. This isn't a strike. This isn't a strike and a retaliation and a tit for tat. This is full-up war. And so when Israel says it's going to keep going, this is where we are. And they started at the top, and they started very, very seriously, removing the chief of the general staff. In other words, like our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, attacking basically what would be our senior military command. You can imagine what Americans would do. The question is whether Israel's ability to respond has been affected by Israel trying to decapitate.
If you're tired and overwhelmed by social media, apparently now you have to risk your life to go viral, and you just want to promote your brand or your business in a nonchalant, easy way that is a surefire way to make you actually grow and sell on social media,
saw last time, because Iran now is under existential threat, and we should expect a response along those lines.
And Israel says that Iran is retaliating for massive strikes on its nuclear and military targets. Officials in Israel already confirming that they've detected a series of drone retaliatory attacks. We're going to break all that down coming up next. Israel says that it has intercepted, some Iranian drones just outside of its territory a little earlier. The Israeli military said that Iran launched more than 100 drones toward Israeli territory, and it was in retaliation for Israel's strikes against Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities just hours ago. Israel has been placed under a state of emergency, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that really Iran is posed a threat to this country's existence.
In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
Meanwhile, the Israeli military has released brand new video into CNN showing American-made fighter jets that it says were used in the airstrikes on Iran. The U.S. has long been Israel's primary weapons supplier, you recall. And Israel says that U.S.-built F-35s, F-15s, and F-16 fighter jets were among the 200 aircraft that carried out the assault on Iranian nuclear and military targets recently. And that figure represents nearly 60% of Israel's combat-ready aircraft, and that's according to the International Institute for Strategic Studies. CNN's Fred Playton has more on the situation and what's happening right now in Iran.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is vowing severe punishment for the Israelis after those strikes carried out by Israel on targets inside Iran. Now, the Iranians are acknowledging that several of their top-level military commanders have been killed, as well as also nuclear scientists. The Iranians are also saying that there was damage to residential areas as well, and that there were people who were injured on the ground as those strikes were taking place. Now, some of the most severe casualties for the Iranians are definitely the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hossein Salami, the top general in Iran, and certainly someone who was very powerful, not just in Iran, but in the entire Middle Eastern region. Of course, the IRGC is really very much the elite wing of Iran's military. However, the chief of Iran's general staff of the military, Mohammad Bagheri, was also killed in the strikes the Iranians are now acknowledging. However, one of the things that we've seen in the past with the Iranians is that especially the Revolutionary Guard Corps certainly has a propensity and the capability to replenish their ranks in a very short period of time and continue their operations. And that is certainly something that the Iranians are vowing now. We've been speaking in the past couple of days to senior Iranian officials, and they've been telling us that Iran has already worked up a list of targets inside Israel that they would hit in case of a strike like the ones that we've been seeing by the Israelis over the past couple of hours. The Iranians telling us that on their target list there is also what they call clandestine nuclear facilities of the Israelis. The weapons of choice for the Iranians in the past, of course, have been their powerful ballistic missiles, of which the country has a lot, and then also drones, which the Iranians have been using and also have been making better over the past couple of years. The Iranians are saying that this response is going to be severe. However, the Iranians also in the past have shown that they are going to strike back at a time of their choice and also in the way that they see fit. Fred Playton, CNN, Berlin.
And joining us now is Uzi Rabi. She's the senior researcher at the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies. Uzi, so nice to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you.
So we've heard from other guests really discussing what is Prime Minister Netanyahu's intent here and his clear objective. I wonder if you can talk to us more about the timing. You've described this development as a calculated operation on behalf of Israel. Why carry out the strikes now, while the nuclear talks were still pending?
Well, this is almost the 11th hour. We have been talking 2 decades about window of opportunities. It is something that was very, very close to the threshold, so to speak. Iran was to cross the no-return line, and basically, with our bitter lessons of the 7th of October atrocities, this time, actually, it was almost now or never. In my opinion, the time was ripe. Let me just remind you that what happened in the recent year is that Israel has managed to weaken up the proxy network of Iran. We'll have to see actually what the implications are and to what extent Iran could use these proxies now. But basically, Iran got kind of a blow which was inflicted on its head by Israel. In October, it lost a lot of dominance in the region. The people there are eager to have a change, and this is, in my opinion, the best window of opportunities to be capitalized on in order to make sure that Iran, which says days and night, Israel should not be basically, should not exist or should not be recognized as a state, This is a state that we should actually deal with that once and for all. And we had to do that. Israel had to do that by itself with the kind and generous, I would say, consent and support from behind from the U.S.
Uzi, and just bouncing off that last point that you just presented here in terms of Iran's ability here, clearly it had been previously debilitated and now suffering a significant blow, not only getting its leadership hit, but also its assets. How worried should Israel be about this retaliation that it's, from multiple accounts has already begun?
In my opinion, very. I mean, we are not trying to belittle Iran. It's a cunning leadership, very, very shrewd, cruel. We know actually that when it comes to Iran, this is something that has to be taken seriously. But what I try to say is that, in my opinion, Iran is much weaker when it comes to its conventional capabilities in comparison to what it had 1 year ago. Having said that, everything is certain, but a response actually, or retaliation, as you said, is in the offing. And this is why actually Israelis is putting a great and concerted effort to explain to its citizens that this is actually a very crucial time. Iran is about to retaliate. I hope that Israel's defense capabilities, as was shown many times, is going actually to be there in order to better protect the Israeli people from the Iranian retaliation.
And in the last few seconds I have with you, is you just help me really underscore the unprecedented nature of these strikes. We had seen strikes in the past year. How is this different? Why does this matter so much?
It is very different, and I think that details about that are going actually to be disclosed later on, and people will learn about it. It is fascinating what happened here. It was so meticulous, so well organized, intelligence in its highest flower. In my opinion, this is something by which to open up, I hope, a new chapter in the history of the region, because Iran is not a state by itself. It is a construction. This is the construction of evil in the Middle East. If we would like actually to have a different Middle East, this is kind of a point of departure. I'm not talking about the Iranian people, not at all. I am talking about this lethal combination of ayatollahs and people of the Revolutionary Guard. I hope that maybe this would also lead to a regime change in the end of the day, basically with the support of the world, of the free world, and the people of Iran. But in any case, Iran is going actually to have kind of a lesson with which to know how to proceed, whether to an agreement with the United States or an overall war. Israel is being left with no choice. We cannot let Iran go nuclear, because this would herald the end of Israel. Just simple as that. And this is why Israel did what it did, what it had done this morning.
Israel says that it has begun to shoot down Iranian drones that were launched in retaliation for an unprecedented series of military strikes. Israel said that more than 200 jets were used to hit over 100 nuclear and military targets across Iran. The strikes targeted both facilities and key Iranian personnel. The commander-in-chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, for example, as well as 6 nuclear scientists were among those killed in the attacks. Iran's supreme leader vowing to strike back at Israel. Israel's military says that Iran has already launched more than 100 drones in retaliation, and also says that it has begun intercepting some of those drones just outside of Israel's territory. The Israeli defense minister said that the strikes against Iran have, or at least defended those strikes against Iran.
We are at a critical juncture. If we miss it, we will have no way to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon that threatens our existence. We have dealt with Iran's proxies over the past year and a half, but now we are dealing with the snake's head itself.
Let's get more now from Jasmine El Gamal.
This is not a scam. The Health Food Allowance card is available for those on Medicare. This card can be worth a lot per year that can be used at your favorite supermarket for grocery shopping.
Of course, it's our pleasure. So Iran has, as they put it, vowing severe punishment. Just given the blow that they've been dealt, just today alone, I mean, losing some of its military leadership, some of its assets as well, how much footing is the regime on in terms of issuing this threat and actually carrying through with that threat by launching some of this initial wave of drones?
Right. I mean, this was obviously a devastating blow to Iran, both in terms of personnel and in terms of locations and in terms of nuclear-related targets. This is something that Israelis, the Israeli government has not explored. It has targeted military targets before, but not nuclear sites. And so Iran is under a lot of pressure to respond and to respond proportionally. But of course, then that would invite even further retaliation and a further risk of regional conflict. So there are a few options that Iran is probably considering right now. The first one is unlikely, which is that they don't do anything at all. Because they're severely weakened, because they don't want to invite further retaliation from Israel, they may just choose to do something symbolic. I think that's highly unlikely given the gravity of what just happened to them. So they're probably going to look at several options. One is just limiting their retaliatory strikes to Israeli targets. The other, of course, is widening their scope of targets to include U.S. assets and personnel in the region, knowing, of course, that the U.S., if not supported Israel in this attack, would be there to defend it. And as you know, the Iranian regime has always tied the U.S. with Israel, so they can take it further than just Israel with U.S. personnel and targets in the region, or they can limit it just to Israeli strikes. I think they will probably go for the latter, which is just retaliatory, what they call proportional retaliatory strikes against Israel.
Jasmine, what questions do you have about the U.S.'s involvement to whatever extent? Obviously, we heard from the very beginning the U.S. making it very clear that it did not have an active role, though it did have knowledge about this. Do you what's going on in your mind right now in terms of what this could potentially mean for the White House?
Well, a couple of things. First, we know that Steve Witkoff, the special envoy for the Middle East, was set to meet with Iran in the 6th round of talks on Sunday. That is up in the air now. The Iranians are now saying they're not going to attend, even though Steve Witkoff says he's still planning on going. So first and foremost, I think it sets back, and I think that's an understatement, but it sets back diplomatic talks between Iran and the U.S. to come up with a long-term solution for Iran's nuclear program and nuclear ambitions. Secondly, I think that Iran basically is going to be scrambling right now to figure out what to do, and it's going to be trying to figure out exactly how much the U.S. was involved in this. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio put out a statement, and it was worded interestingly because it said that the U.S. was told by Israel that Israel believed this was an act of self-defense. He didn't put out any U.S. assessments on how close Iran was to a nuclear weapon or to having the capability to build a nuclear weapon. It was all about, this is what the Israelis have told us. We are supportive of Israel. He did not say that the U.S. had prior knowledge of this attack, but he did say that, and he didn't say that the U.S. was involved in the attack in any way, but he did say that the Israelis said that this was a self-defensive move, and he warned Iran not to retaliate against U.S. assets in the region.
Jasmine, in the last minute I have with you, I wonder if you could also maybe provide your analysis on what this could mean domestically for Iran. What are the conversations that are happening, not only among their citizens, which we've seen some pictures of rubble in residential areas, but also for the regime? I mean, this is more proof that they are incapable of protecting not just their senior leadership in the military, but their infrastructure as well. So what questions are being raised domestically?
Look, I think that this is a moment in Iran where people are really scrambling to figure out what's happening. I mean, if just looking on social media and looking at what many Iranians are saying, these are lives, these are human lives at stake, and people are wondering what this is going to mean for them, whether Israel is going to continue with further attacks, if Iran retaliates, if that's going to mean something for them. I mean, this is a moment of great distress, I think, in the region. Of course, there are some people, especially those who've been impacted by Iran and its proxies activities over the decades, who are going to be happy to see Iran hit in this way. But largely, people in the region are waking up and just wondering what this means for them. And I think that question is really unclear. The Iranian regime now basically could see itself as being in an existential threat. And we know that when people feel existentially threatened, they take reckless actions. And that's what people are really worried about, is recklessness moving forward from now.
It's such an important point to end on. Jasmine El-Gamal, thank you as always for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning and welcome to all of our viewers joining us from the United States and all around the world. I'm Polo Sandoval. It is Friday, June the 13th, 4 a.m. here in New York, 11 a.m. in Israel, where the military now says that it has begun to shoot down Iranian drones that are headed towards their country. The statement says that they were intercepted just outside Israeli territory after Tehran launched more than 100 drones. Hours earlier, Israel said that it struck targets across Iran related to its nuclear program using more than 200 fighter jets in the operation. Iran state TV says that the strikes killed a number of military leaders and nuclear scientists, including 3 of the most powerful people in the country. They include the chief of staff of Iran's armed forces, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, and a former national security chief. Some of the sights and sounds of those airstrikes. Israel says that it is, or at least that its strikes have already hit more than 100 targets across Iran, including this one that caused multiple explosions. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is not done yet, and he said that his country had no choice but to attack.
In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
CNN's Paula Hancock joins us live from Abu Dhabi, been following these strikes and the retaliation from Iran. Paula, it's good to have you. Are you hearing any potential response from leaders in the region?
We are hearing response, Polo, and it's really a combination of condemnation against Israel, but also concern as to how far this could go. There are real concerns from what we are seeing from reactions across the region that this could escalate, that this could drag more countries into what is happening between Israel and Iran. Saudi Arabia was one of the first to respond. They said that they condemn the strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli attacks. A very similar response from both the Lebanese Prime Minister and President. The President saying that he's now trying to focus on stability in the region. Of course, this is a region that has seen great turmoil over the last couple of years, and some of these countries were hoping that they were going to be able to collect themselves, to strengthen their government, certainly in the case of Lebanon, and this has thrown that all up now. We heard from Qatar that they called it a dangerous escalation. The UAE condemned it, calling on the United Nations Security Council to get involved and to try and secure a ceasefire. We have heard from Iran as well, saying that they wanted the UN Security Council to get involved. And we heard from Jordan, which borders Israel, that they did not want their airspace or their territory to be used, as they say, as a battleground. Now, since that point, these drones that we have seen being fired from Iran, Jordanian state media says that the military has shot some of them down over their airspace, saying that they had entered Jordan's airspace and there was a concern that there could be damage to either infrastructure or civilians on the ground in Jordan itself. Paulo?
And Paula, the Israeli government has warned its citizens that they should be hunkering down, expecting, as they put it, difficult hours ahead, which, I mean, some may even see this as days ahead. Do you have any insight on what people in Israel are doing right now?
There's a state of emergency that's been declared in Israel, and residents have been told to shelter as best they can. We also know that some of the hospitals, in fact hospitals across the country, have been put on the highest level of alert, that non-urgent activities have been cancelled, that those inside the hospitals are being taken to safer places. In fact, we have been seeing images of underground wards being readied in case they are needed. We also know schools, workplaces have been closed at this point, and in the early hours of Friday, just after this happened and these alerts went out in Israel, there were a number of residents in Tel Aviv, for example, that were rushing to local supermarkets to try and stock up, because there is an expectation this could last. The Prime Minister has said that this could go on for days. Let's listen to what the Chief of Staff of the IDF had to say.
Citizens of Israel, I don't promise you only successes. The Iranian regime will attempt to attack us in response. The absorption of incoming hits may be different than what we have gotten used to. The IDF is prepared to defend the Israeli home front, and I ask you to demonstrate personal, family, and communal responsibility and adhere to instructions.
Now, the IDF also says that they have called up tens of thousands of soldiers to prepare for the next steps, and the Prime Minister has said that there will be next steps, that this could take days. And what we've heard from Israeli officials really across the board is that it was necessary as Iran was an existential threat to Israel. They pointed to the IAEA resolution that passed on Thursday, or at least was announced on Thursday.
Your productivity stack is actually slowing you down. Every new app adds more drag. So here's how I cut the noise. So I got to a point where I was juggling a reminders app, a to-do list, a calendar, note taking, docs. It was getting so out of hand, and I'd waste half my morning just trying to figure out where I wrote something down. The apps that were supposed to make me feel more productive were actually the bottleneck. That's when I started using Motion, and it's not just another tool, it's actually a system that brings everything together. Tasks, meetings, notes, plans. Now I just open one app and I have my whole day mapped out. So now instead of jumping through multiple different apps, now I just open Motion and have everything I need right there. And you know what the crazy part is? It actually moves tasks around in my day automatically. And this is something I didn't even know I need until I started using it. And now they just added Motion Docs. Now I have all my project notes in the same place too. I don't even really plan anymore. I just brain dump and then it turns it into a schedule. It's completely free to try out, and it'll change your entire workflow in like a week. So click below to start your trial.
How are Israelis likely to respond? How are they responding to this series of strikes?
So thank you for the question, Polo, because I'm sitting right now inside my house in Tel Aviv, and at 3 a.m., I should say exactly at 2:59, there was a siren. We woke up from the siren, but it was an early warning for the early warning, meaning everywhere across Israel, into our phones. For me, that was at home, my husband, some of the kids, we were woken up and told, go to a safe place. That means that all of us, no matter where we are, and this was at 3 a.m., we're looking around to make sure that we have a safe place, that we're feeling in that sense safe. In October of 2024, when the Islamic regime of Iran attacked us then, we got also an early warning. That was at 3 a.m. I imagine that there are people who went back to sleep. I was not one of them. As we were watching both the attack that was happening in Iran and that feeling here that we know that the Islamic regime will attack back. We've been told this very often. This isn't something we don't know. That doesn't make it any easier. I went out before to go out myself. As Paula was saying, you want to get yourself a little bit of food. You want to make sure that you're okay. We've been told in that sense to take care of ourselves for a few days. I went out. The streets are quite empty. You do not feel that this is a Friday. I'll tell the viewers also that in Tel Aviv today, in a couple hours, there was supposed to be the annual Tel Aviv Pride Parade. It's a very big event. A lot of people are here from around the world. They canceled that event because right now we're all in an emergency status. So we're near the safe rooms. We don't have to be inside them. That's why I'm in my study, but we are near the safe rooms. We're taking care of ourselves. We're doing what we're told to do. This is to save lives. And in that, I feel much safer here than I would have thought, considering that there were UAVs on the way to here from Iran.
That is reassuring to hear. I mean, this is an important angle, too, in the story, right? The residents, too, who are watching, waiting for any potential impact. Do you feel that there is confidence among the citizenry there that the defense system will be able to essentially do its job as these drones approach?
So I'm going to say something kind of Israeli, which is the third time you give me ice cream, but it means the first time I didn't feel very strong. That was in April of 2024. The Islamic regime attacked us. In October of 2024, it was very scary, very large scale, and we saw the capabilities that we have. This time, I certainly feel confident in the capabilities, but I'm also a military person and I understand statistics. Right. Statistics, we do amazing. We protect 95%. Everybody understands that means that 5% get through. And so we are aware, we're taking care of ourselves. Part of our protection is in the fact that we act accordingly. And part of that is that we've built over the last 2 decades systems that are defense systems to stop the infiltrator, both the UAVs, but especially the ICBMs, the different type of missiles that would get here very quickly. When they launch UAVs against us, it takes hours. When they launch ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles of different types, that takes minutes. And we're all aware of that. And I breathe in deep and I believe in our systems.
Colonel, let me keep tapping into that military experience. Let me get some of your analysis on the timing of all of this. We've heard from other guests as well, really talk about the intent from IDF forces. What about the timing? Why strike now while these nuclear talks were still ongoing, you think?
First of all, I think that and I'm saying this from a military and strategic point of view, didn't believe the talks as they were ongoing. In any case, it was perhaps about the nuclear aspects, but it wasn't about the platforms, the missiles, the UAVs, all of the other capabilities that they have. And I have to say, I don't believe the Islamic regime of Iran, or I would say otherwise. After October 7th, with what happened in Israel by Hamas at the time and has continued to happen, I read what Khamenei, the supreme leader, says every week about us. I offer people to go and look at his X, what he writes in X, what tweet, what he puts out, because he calls for our annihilation. And that combination of going down the nuclear path, calling for our annihilation, attacking us in the different places, I think that window of opportunity is that we built a capability that can be overall. It's not perfect. We're still not at the end of this event. But if we can take out that nuclear capability, push it back for many, many years, for me as an Israeli, I certainly feel safer. I also think that for everybody in the world, none of us want to see a nuclear Iran. And this is a very clear-cut way to get this done, both the platforms, not just the nuclear capability.
Retired Colonel Miri Eisen, we're so grateful for your point of view, not only as retired military, but also certainly as a resident of Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for checking in with us. Do take care.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Well, the U.S. has issued a security alert urging embassy employees and American citizens in Israel to shelter in place until further notice. We're just talking about that as Israel continues to launch strikes against Iran. And Tehran also begins to retaliate. The warning coming as the Trump administration is trying to distance itself from those attacks. In a statement on X shortly after the first airstrike, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stressing that Israel took, quote, unilateral action against Iran with no U.S. involvement. Secretary Rubio stressed that the administration's top priority is protecting U.S. Welcome back. Israel says that it's begun to shoot down Iranian drones that were launched in retaliation for an unprecedented series of military strikes. That is our breaking news story at this hour. Israel says that it struck over 100 nuclear and military targets across Iran, like this uranium enrichment site that you could see there, fully engulfed in flames with plumes of smoke coming from the scene. Also, that they hit nuclear and military facilities, as well as targeting key personnel. The commander-in-chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, for example, as well as 6 nuclear scientists, all of them among those 6 people killed. And this, just the beginning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the operation will continue for days to come, while Iran's supreme leader is vowing to strike back. Now, despite that, residents of Tel Aviv expressed support for Israel's military action.
I bless Israeli army to succeed in this attack. Am Israel Chai, we are strong, we will be here, it's our country. We love America, USA, we love Trump.
We had no choice. We can't wait till they do something, then it'll be too late.
The residents you just heard from now living in a state of emergency. Israel's attack coming just a few days after Iran was set to resume talks on a nuclear deal with the U.S. In fact, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff says that he's still planning to hold talks with Iranian officials in Oman on Sunday. There has been no indication from Iran yet whether the attacks have actually changed their plans to attend those talks, so we'll have to see. And this would be the 6th round of talks between the U.S. and Iran as the Trump administration seeks a diplomatic resolution. An Israeli source previously told CNN last month that Israel would be prepared to carry out military action against Iran if the U.S. negotiated a deal that was unacceptable to Israel. World leaders, in the meantime, they are expressing their concern about the escalation between Israel and Iran, but New Zealand's Prime Minister is hopeful that talks with the U.S. could still help the situation.
It's a really unwelcome development in the Middle East. You know, the risk of miscalculation is high. That region does not need any more military action and risk associated with that. What we want to see is the parties coming together and having a conversation. We're aware, obviously, of the US-Iran conversations that are hoping to take place in Oman this weekend. We see that as a better pathway forward. But obviously, it's a huge concern to us.
Let's get more now from Sanam Vakil. She is the director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House and joins us now from London. Thank you so much for joining us, Sanam.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure. Now, as the U.S. makes very clear that Israel did this on their own, that they acted on their own, I'm wondering to what extent will Tehran actually try to hold the U.S. responsible? We already know that the White House had prior knowledge of this, according to multiple reports, not to mention the weapons and the aircraft that are provided to Israel. So how is Iran going to handle that?
The Iranian government is certainly going to read this strike as being green-lighted by the Trump administration. And despite President Trump and Marco Rubio trying to distance themselves and suggesting that the U.S. wasn't involved, their prior knowledge and their inability to hold Israel back will be seen in Tehran as the contrary. Now, Marco Rubio in his statement made clear that the Iranian response, which certainly they're expecting and is already underway, should not target American military facilities and certainly not impact Americans anywhere across the region. Those are red lines for Iran, and Tehran is certainly boxed in because they need to respond. This was a preemptive, provocative, and flagrant attack by the Israeli government, and they need to prevent further attacks from coming, but they also don't want to be drawn into a full-scale, all-out war, knowing that they are the weaker party in this military conflict.
The question I have is who informed who in terms of Israeli and U.S. relations? We know that President Trump had not just privately, but publicly had urged Benjamin Netanyahu to not take this sort of military strike. So that will be interesting in the hours ahead to see how the White House responds. I'm wondering, Sanam, if you can put into perspective what this means. We've seen airstrikes before, just last year. How is this a further escalation and a new and dangerous chapter in this conflict?
This is certainly very different from the cycle of airstrikes we saw in 2024. Those strikes, of course.
Was it really God's wish to kill Abraham's elder son? Why Isaac needed to be punished by God if he didn't?
Iranian forces in the region. This is a different parameter. Israel is being preemptive, saying that it's seizing this moment to stop Iran's nuclear program. And it's happened at a time where the U.S. and Iran were engaging in diplomacy. So here we can also understand that the Israeli objectives are supposed to halt the diplomatic pathway as well. And because Israel's strikes have targeted Iran's command structure, also targeted Iran's nuclear facilities, although not all of them, including some of the principal ones. And third of all, are also targeting Iran's radar systems, its missile facilities. I think the Israeli government is trying to penetrate deep inside Iran and trying to foment further weakening of the Islamic Republic from within.
So here we are hours later, Iran vowing punishment. On the other side, you have Israel telling its residents to prepare to even hunker down and expect this retaliation. I'm wondering if you could just help us look into the future. What, in your opinion, do the next 24 to 48 hours look like in this conflict?
Well, you know, we've seen a wave of European condemnations, although perhaps, excuse me, not strong enough to really bring down the temperature. I think we are in an escalatory cycle. We have to see the impact of Iran's response. And since Netanyahu has said that this is going to go on for days, again, we have to see where the Israeli targets are going. Iran, I think for the time being, is not going to take its strikes to the region or to the United States. It's going to try to keep this contained between the two countries. But there is a risk of spillover. There is a risk that Gulf oil facilities or infrastructure could be targeted as Iran's options are very limited. And it will look to those maybe strikes as an opportunity to put pressure on Israel to stop further attacks against Iran.
And to your point on oil infrastructure, the question is, how will markets react to in the hours ahead, not just here in the U.S., but around the world? Thank you so much for all this great analysis. Sanaa Vakil, appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Israeli airstrikes, they have killed 3 of Iran's top leaders. Now the Israeli military says that Iranian drones are headed toward Israel. The latest on the breaking news just ahead, right here on CNN. You're watching Early Start. To our viewers joining us here in the United States and all around the world, I'm Polo Sandoval in New York City. In a devastating blow to Iran's leadership, 3 of the country's most powerful men have been killed in Israel's unprecedented attacks. The head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the country's highest-ranking military officer, and a close aide to Iran's supreme leader, all confirmed killed in these overnight attacks. Experts say that their deaths could seriously hamper Iran's ability to respond to Israel's stunning assault, which Benjamin Netanyahu says is far from over, as his country works to roll back what he calls the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. And despite airstrikes hitting apartment buildings and skyscrapers in Tehran, the Israeli prime minister says that Israel is working to help the people of Iran.
Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those 2 countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran. And I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near.
But still, though, those tensions remain extremely high in the region. In fact, analysts warning that Israel attacks will likely trigger a massive retaliation from Iran, which could tip the region into a full-scale war. CNN's Fred Plyton has more on the situation inside Iran.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is vowing severe punishment for the Israelis after those strikes carried out by Israel on targets inside Iran. Now, the Iranians are acknowledging that several of their top-level military commanders have been killed, as well as also nuclear scientists. The Iranians are also saying that there was damage to residential areas as well, and that there were people who were injured on the ground as those strikes were taking place. Now, some of the most severe casualties for the Iranians are definitely the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hossein Salami, the top general in Iran, and certainly someone who was very powerful, not just in Iran, but in the entire Middle Eastern region. Of course, the IRGC is really very much the elite wing of Iran's military. However, the chief of Iran's general staff of the military, Mohammad Bagheri, was also killed in the strikes. The Iranians are now acknowledging. However, one of the things that we've seen in the past with the Iranians is that especially the Revolutionary Guard Corps certainly has a propensity and a capability to replenish their ranks in a very short period of time and continue their operations. And that is certainly something that the Iranians are vowing now. We've been speaking in the past couple of days to senior Iranian officials, and they've been telling us that Iran has already worked up a list of targets inside Israel that they would hit in case of a strike like the ones that we've been seeing by the Israelis over the past couple of hours. The Iranians telling us that on their target list there is also what they call clandestine nuclear facilities of the Israelis. The weapons of choice for the Iranians in the past, of course, have been their powerful ballistic missiles, of which the country has a lot, and then also drones, which the Iranians have been using and also have been making better over the past couple of years. The Iranians are saying that this response is going to be severe. However, the Iranians also in the past have shown that they are going to strike back at a time of their choice and also in the way that they see fit. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Berlin.
H.A. Hellier is a Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security. He joins us from Cairo, Egypt, with some analysis. It's great to see you again, H.A., on what's been a very busy morning thus far. Let's dive straight in. I wonder if you could just put into perspective not only the scale, but also the objective of these strikes.
So they're very, I have to say they're somewhat unrelated in the sense that the scale of the strikes are meant to be big. They're meant to be as noticeable.
I want to stop this right here and get into a couple of major points that we need to understand. First and foremost, I want to pull up an article about Ripple and XRP. Ripple Labs is the company that owns XRP, and the announcement that XRP will be replacing the dollar. For those that don't understand why all of these things are happening, they're happening because of the blockchain. Okay? Blockchain. If you don't understand what the blockchain is, you may need to become a student and find out what's going on. Let's see. XRP news to replace the dollar. Let's see. See, when you have the lady Rosie Rios, if you don't know who Rosie Rios is, look down at a dollar bill or a $20 bill or a $10 bill, and you will see her signature. Rosie Rios, she is on the board for XRP. For those that don't know, blockchain technology, most people know about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether. We know that Bitcoin in market cap just recently bypassed silver. And that means that Bitcoin is a store of value. Okay. It is a store, officially a store of value. So let's take a look. Take a look at XRP. Let's see what it's trading at first and foremost. So we'll go to CoinMarketCap.com. And we see that XRP is top 4 in market cap. That's 126 billion. Okay. That is 126 billion. And that should alarm you if this is the first time that you've heard about this digital asset called XRP, which is a bridge currency. Okay. Its utility. As a matter of fact, let's go and take a look at the we'll click on XRP. And these are the top exchanges that it is traded on. Please understand that people do trade cryptocurrency, but to me, trading cryptocurrency in the accumulation phase, these are assets that will one day be that you'll be able to use as loan collateral. So all of the XRP that you purchase, I would not trade it. That's just my opinion. We're talking about it selling for right now for 214. Saw a steep decline today. Well, actually last night at 8 p.m. That was a steep decline. As you can see here, this is the 1-day chart. This is the 7-day chart. Let's see. This is the month chart. And this is the year's chart. So I would say that you really, 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 really should consider some XRP for sure. Okay, here's the white paper over to the left. The white paper serves for a coin as a perspective serves for an equity or a stock, equity asset. It just pretty much shows you its managers. It shows you, it highlights what the utility of the asset is. And let's see, let's take a look. I've never really read Ripple's white paper. Of the ledger consensus protocol or its analysis. We will continue hosting this draft for historical interest, but it should not be used as a reference for an updated analysis and presentation of the consensus protocol. Please refer to ARXI. So they have another white paper as a more updated version. But it kind of gives you the initial interest in research in distributed consistent systems has increased markedly in recent years with a certain focus. So it's, of course, we're not going to read this whole white paper. But let's see, Rosie Rios and XRP. Let me see if I can find her speech. Yeah, this is her speech. So give you an idea of what you're dealing with.
Prior to becoming Treasurer of the United States, I was Managing Director of Investments for a $22 billion firm based in San Francisco. and I was asked by President Obama to be part of the Treasury transition team at the height of the financial crisis. I was the longest Senate confirmed official in the Obama administration. It is my name on the lower left-hand side of U.S. money. So out of the approximately $2 trillion of U.S. currency in circulation worldwide, my name is approximately on 1.8 trillion. So I can honestly say that no one has made more money than I have. All right, here we go. And I want to start by saying I am also on the board of Ripple, which is XRP, cryptocurrency. But I want to make something very, very clear. Blockchain is here to stay. The train has left the station. As far as I'm concerned, whether it's fractional real estate, whether it's art, whether it's NFTs, blockchain is not going away.
Did you see that? Please understand.
Can I do this in a minute? Only time will tell. Hi, I'm Rosie Rios, and this is Crypto in a Minute. So, the way I think about blockchain, it's a decentralized ledger. So how it records your transactions could be anything from, NFTs to real estate to art. And there are so many more applications that we don't even know are out there. So, as a great example, my son just started his own startup company, which is this crowdfunding portal for real estate on the blockchain. And when he explained it to me how it works, it really just opens up your eyes about all the other use cases that could be out there. And so when you have that type of kind of sophisticated technology. Think about how the world of technology has changed even in the last few years, right? Whether it's virtual reality, augmented reality, and now applied augmented reality in the metaverse. So I think that the prospects are out there. I just think it's so exciting to think about how this next generation even uses the blockchain and thinks about commerce, and I think there's just so much more to come. I did that in 59 seconds, just an FYI.
Just to let you know, blockchain technology. Blockchain is a global distributed ledger. It is an immutable ledger, which just means it can't be changed, right? You can't manipulate it, right? Which is why you're seeing bombs fall now, because the dollar is on its way out. You've got BRICS currency, which is Great Britain, Brazil, India. Let's see, it's BRICS. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and it's Saudi Arabia, and there are more countries. There are like 10 other countries that have been added. And like I said, I haven't even done the show in a while, so it's just I'm not as sharp as I was with the information. I have been taking a look at it, but just, of course, focusing on this book and focusing on our e-commerce store. Make sure that you visit us at shopwildgoods.com. That's at shopwildgoods with an S.com. And come over and get some lifestyle gifts or what have you. But since December 1st, 2020, I have been in the blockchain space, a 20-something year career in the financial industry. Before that, Series 7's licensed and 66 licensed. And so I've been in that financial space for many, many years. And nothing is going to change the world like blockchain technology. As a matter of fact, I'll see if I can play Don Tapp Scott, who is a Canadian businessman who was the first to introduce me to blockchain. And let's see what he says about the blockchain. Very informative.
that trust is not achieved through a middleman, it's achieved through collaboration and through cryptography and security. So this thing is a big collaboration. There is some crypto in the DNA of the birds that gives it some rules. You know, like a big one is don't bump into anybody else.
Actually, what I'll do is I'll stop this video and we're going to start another one, go live and get into some blockchain technology and some education there. Cryptocurrency, digital assets. Listen, the world is changing. When you see RWA, when you see that acronym, that just means real world assets. Okay, so that you can understand what's going on. As a matter of fact, what I want to do is I'm going to shut this one down, and then I'll bring another live up. We're going to get into some blockchain technology. What is blockchain technology? The power is not in the digital asset. It's not in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, XRP. The power is in the trust protocol of the blockchain. So I'll come back on and provide some education for the people. Shout out to the family. Sleep money.